We make things. We use our hands, minds, and machines to build, to fix, to improve. We're known as do-it-yourselfers, home improvement fans, fix-it fanatics, inventors. At our core, though, we're all makers. So let's jump in and make something. Hi, I'm Ron Hazelton. Welcome to the show. You know, the ceiling over our heads is referred to by some as the fifth wall because it offers so many decorating possibilities. Today we're going to use decorative foam ceiling tile to transform an outdated popcorn ceiling into one that truly makes a statement. Then I'm going to share with you several clever tips and techniques, everything from how to repair broken ceramic to how to make a throw rug slip-proof. So let's get started. Now this is a popcorn ceiling, very popular from the 1950s onward, not so much today. Now if you've got one of these, you really have two choices. You can take it off, really a messy job, or cover it up. And how are we going to cover it up? By using these decorative ceiling tiles. Made of polystyrene, they're very thin and extremely lightweight. I began this project by going online to Decorative Ceiling Tile. There, I found it easy to browse a wide range of styles, patterns, and colors. After a fair amount of looking, I settled on this pattern, which is classic yet simple. Then, placed my order. A few days later, the ceiling tiles arrived, ready to be installed. Before beginning, though, it's necessary to remove a couple of things from the ceiling, starting with this lamp fixture. I'll do that by shutting off the power at the circuit breaker, removing the canopy, disconnecting the wiring, and detaching the mounting bracket. I'll also need to take down this ceiling vent register. For this installation, we'll be starting at the center of the room and working outward toward the walls. In order to find that center starting point, we first measure the length of each wall. Then find and mark the center point. Next, drive in a small nail at those center points, loop the end of a chalk line over the nail, stretch it to the opposite wall, wrap it around the nail there, and snap the chalk line. Repeat this process on the remaining two walls. The point where these two lines intersect is the center of the ceiling. This is the beginning point for the ceiling layout. We'll be using this instant grab adhesive to mount the tiles to the ceiling. Begin by cutting off the end of the cartridge. Screw on the dispensing nozzle and cut off the tip. Load the cartridge into a standard caulking gun and squeeze the trigger until the adhesive begins to flow from the end. Apply the adhesive to the back of the tile in quarter-sized dollops spaced about 6 inches apart. Popcorn ceilings typically have a rough texture. When the tile is pressed in place, the adhesive dollops will flatten, filling the surface irregularities and providing a secure bond. Press the tile upward, keeping your hands as flat as possible to avoid denting the tile with your fingertips. The corner of the first tile should be on top of the cross mark, and the edges aligned with the chalk lines. While it is possible to do this project alone, I prefer to do it with two people, one applying the adhesive and the other setting the tiles in place. For one thing, this eliminates a lot of climbing up and down the ladder. The adhesive grabs and holds the tile immediately. However, it also allows the tile to be slid sideways for precise positioning. I find that a two-person team also makes it possible to develop a sort of rhythm, allowing the job to go smoothly and faster. Place ceiling tiles right on top of light boxes. Then use a utility knife with a fresh blade to cut the opening. The edge of the box will act as a template. The same holds true when cutting openings for ceiling vents. Place the tile first, then cut using the edge of the opening as a guide. As soon as we finish putting up the full tiles, it'll be time to take care of the border, the space between the edge of the last full tile and the wall. This means we'll be cutting tiles. For this, I like to use a cushioned cutting surface like this piece of fiberboard. The utility knife will cut into this softer material, keeping the blade sharper much longer. For the edge or border tiles, measure the distance from the last full tile to the wall. Measure in 2 places. There could be a slight difference. Transfer those measurements to a full tile and mark both locations using a sharp utility knife. Place a straight edge on the marks and cut through the tile using a long, even stroke. Apply adhesive to the back using the same size dollops and spacing as with the full tiles. When placing the border tiles in position, make sure the cut edge is against the wall. With all of the ceiling tiles up, it's time to caulk the joints. The seams should already be close fitting. The idea here is to conceal any minor gaps or misalignments. For this, we'll use a water-based latex painter's caulk. Cut about 1/2 inch off the end of the tapered nozzle. This should leave an 1/8 inch opening at the nozzle end. Swing out the piercing tool on the caulk gun, insert it in the opening, and pierce the seal at the base of the nozzle. Load the cartridge and pull the trigger a few times. The 1/8 inch opening will make a rather narrow bead, just wide enough to bridge the joint without putting down excess caulk that would need to be cleaned up. Apply the material in about 2-foot sections, then smooth the bead using your finger. Any excess can be removed with a damp cloth. Now, I could let the ceiling tile go right up to the wall and finish there. It would give me a nice clean look. But instead, I'm going to add another detail by using this crown molding, doing something like this. A power miter saw is the quickest way to cut the miters on the ends of the molding. Set the saw angle at 45 degrees and put the crown molding onto the bed upside down, at the same angle it will be when positioned against the wall and ceiling. Then make the cut. Apply adhesive to the back of the molding, putting a bead near the top and bottom edge. Also apply adhesive to the cut end. Set the molding in position, join the mitered ends, and smooth off any adhesive that squeezes out of the joint. If you don't have access to a miter saw, you can purchase these pre-cut corners. Apply adhesive to the back and mitered ends, then press the 2 sections into place. Now any straight piece of molding can be connected with a butt joint. Straight cuts can easily be made using a sharp utility knife and a square. With the ceiling and molding finished, all that's left is to reinstall the light fixture and replace the vent grill. Because of their coarse texture and gravelly surface, popcorn ceilings can be challenging to deal with. Decorative ceiling tiles like these not only conceal an outmoded look, they also add a whole new dimension. What a difference. From a dated popcorn ceiling to a dramatic improvement that would enhance any room.
Now, when it comes to getting really great results in home improvement projects, I honestly believe it's important to use the best tools you can afford. And that's true for paintbrushes. It used to be that brushes fell into one of 2 categories: natural bristle for oil-based paints and nylon for latex or water-based paints. Nowadays, though, the nylon polyester blend can cover everything. A good quality brush should have plenty of densely packed bristles that are straight, evenly trimmed at the end, and securely fastened into the ferrule to eliminate shedding. The standard or square end brush is used for applying paint to a flat surface. The angled or sash or trim brush, on the other hand, is used for cutting in. It can be used in this direction or in this direction. Now, a brush will work better and last longer if it's thoroughly cleaned after every use. Start by rinsing the bristles under running water, and then bend them back like this. This will dislodge any paint that may be trapped up here next to the ferrule. Apply a couple of drops of dishwashing detergent here and here, and then work the bristles in this direction. They'll kind of scrub against each other. Finally, do a thorough rinse, and if there's any paint remaining in the bristles, remove it with a brush comb. Now, if you've got a small job to do and you don't want to bother cleaning your brushes, you might consider these disposable versions. All you do is paint and pitch. Now this is our family's favorite cookie jar, a personalized New York taxi. Only problem is the top was dropped a while ago and there's a pretty big hunk missing right here. Now I have some of the parts but not all of them, so this is more than a simple glue back. It's one method I use for repairing ceramic. Now one of the biggest challenges I'll face in repairing an odd shape like this is keeping it in the right position while I work on it. So here's a little trick that I use. This is just a bucket of sand, and if I take the top and kind of embed it in here like this, I can pretty much let go of it and keep it in any position I want.
I find this dual syringe very handy for dispensing equal parts of epoxy and hardener. Now, thorough mixing is important, but so is time. I've only got about 3 to 4 minutes to work with this adhesive. Because these pieces are so small, a pair of self-gripping tweezers works better than my fingers.
I've glued back all of the pieces that I have, but you can see that there's still quite a bit of material missing here. So I'm going to have to replace that.
Out in my truck, I've got the perfect solution, an all-purpose polyester resin filler. It's quick setting, easy to shape, and will stick to just about anything. Each can comes with a tube of hardener. All I have to do is mix the two together.
Now the more hardener I put in the resin, the faster it will set up. I put quite a bit in here, so I probably only got about 2 minutes to work with this.
What I want to do here is fill the cavity completely. In fact, a little overfilling is a good idea. When the material has reached a rubbery state, it's time to start shaping. I take off some of the excess by first paring it away with a sharp knife. I begin shaping the contours using a rasp. Then I wrap sandpaper around a dowel and start removing the tool marks and blending in the filler. After that, I switch to a very fine paper for final smoothing.
Well, I'd say that takes care of filling in that missing material. Now the only step that's left is to match the color. And to do that, I'm going to use these materials. These are artist acrylic colors. And I'll start with white.
I thin the acrylics with water to make them brush out more smoothly. These paints can be intermixed with each other to create precisely the right color for a near-perfect match. In this case, a little white and red gives me just the pink I'm looking for. The red stripes on the hat require less white. And the flesh tone for the hand is blended from white, red, and yellow.
I'd say the color is just about where I want it. Now there's just one step left.
A clear spray acrylic seals in the colors and adds gloss, making this repair practically undetectable.
With all the traffic that this taxi gets, it's probably only a matter of time until there's another accident. But with this process, I can put this cookie cab back on the road in a New York minute. Oh my gosh! You know, I love this rug, but walking on it, well, that can be a dangerous matter, and I'm going to do something about it.
Now, like most of my projects, this one begins with a shopping trip to pick up a slip-resistant rug pad.
You know, a lot of really good-looking rugs don't have a slip-resistant back. And in my book, well, that's just an accident waiting to happen. So here's an easy way to turn a slippery rug into a slip-free rug.
I've turned the rug over and am placing the rubber pad on the back.
I'm going to mark this just so that it's about 1 inch smaller than the rug itself. Now I'll cut this out with a pair of scissors. Okay, I'll check this for fit. Should be about a 1 inch margin around the edge, more or less. Good. Now I used to just put this down on the floor, the pad and then the carpet on top. But what I found is that the rug actually slips on top of the pad sometimes. So what I started doing was sticking the pad to the rug using this double stick carpet tape. Again, you can find this in your home improvement center, in most hardware stores or carpet stores. Now, once I've got the perimeter done, I like to put a couple of strips in the middle. Some people call this the field. Now I'm going to peel off the protective backing here. I'm going to put the pad on now, just kind of very lightly till I get the position where I want it with that 1 inch margin. Okay, let's try it out. And there we have it. That's how I turn a slippery rug into a slip-free rug.
Here's how to remove a screw whose head is broken off or missing using a hollow screw extractor bit. This bit works best in a drill press. Lock it in the chuck. Center the hollow bit over the screw shaft and begin drilling. Move the drill up and down to clear any wood chips on the inside. Use a small screwdriver to break off the wooden plug, then remove the plug and screw shaft. Select a dowel the same size as the outside diameter of the hollow drill. Cut off a small section, apply glue, insert the dowel into the hole, and tap it to the bottom. Then cut the dowel flush to the surface. Now, if you don't have a drill press, drill a hole through a scrap piece of wood using a bit that's the same size as the outside diameter of the hollow screw extractor. Position the hole over the broken screw. Load the extractor in a handheld drill and, using the scrap as a drill guide, bore a hole around the screw shaft. Remove the guide and take out the screw shaft and core.
To view today's projects again and countless more, go to HouseCallsDIY.com. Step-by-step home improvement tips when you need them.
I'm Brian Kelsey. Welcome to House Calls.
Join us as we tackle some great home projects, as well as look back at favorites from Ron Hazelton on House Calls.